President Buhari receives Ekiti governor-elect, says things are getting better for governing APC.
I appreciate governors, how they mobilize themselves, the APC governors, and supported you. I'm very, very impressed with the people, how they orderly and patiently waited for their turn to vote.
Federal High Court orders INEC to continue registration of voters beyond June 30th deadline.
Kano Ultra Modern Cancer Treatment Center to begin operation soon.
I've already briefed Mr. President Muhammad Buhari, and he has promised to be here in 2 months' time in order to commission this all-important project.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall examine new regulations for online platforms in Nigeria.
Following concerns pertaining to the negative use of online platforms in Nigeria that tends to undermine the nation's security, the federal government issued a code of practice to regulate activities.
Now, according to the agency responsible for overseeing such platforms, that is the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, the new set of regulations is an intervention intended to recalibrate the relationship of online platforms with Nigerians as a way of maximizing benefits for the country and promoting sustainable digital economy.
And above all, the regulation is to protect fundamental human rights of Nigerians and non-Nigerians living in the country, as well as define guidelines for interacting on the digital ecosystem.
Now, the agency, that's NIDA, said the action is in tandem with its mandate contained in Section 6 of the NITDA Act 2007, and that the action is also in line with international best practices as obtainable in democratic nations.
Now, the code of practice, according to the agency, was developed in collaboration with Nigerian Communications Commission, National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDA, National Broadcasting Commission, NBC, and input from interactive computer service platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Google, TikTok, among others.
Now, the new set of regulations is divided into 5 parts, and they provide that all unlawful or harmful content should be taken down within 24 hours on demand, and register also all legal entities with the Corporate Affairs Commission, and that they will pay taxes and appoint country representatives, provide information to the Nigerian government on harmful accounts, troll groups, and delete all information that violates Nigerian law.
Well, Kinsley, if you ask me, I think this is a development in the right direction.
No question about that.
Considering what we see on platforms in Nigeria.
That's right. There's no question about that. There has to be some form of regulation. Exactly. There have to be boundaries,
exactly,
as it were. We do know that the jurisprudence around cyberspace had been growing over the years, and various countries have come to realize the harmful effects of an uncontrolled cyber environment as well as content.
And many countries, indeed, they started early enough, because, visioning, what could be the result of indiscriminate use of platforms, they took action. And Nigeria is keen into it now.
That's right.
Well, in addition, the platforms must create awareness on misinformation and disinformation while abiding by Nigerian laws.
Well, we have to go back again and ask the question, what is the rationale for coming up with a code of practice at this time? Now, is the action belated? But Kira and I just say now that it isn't, but we are going to have experts who will drill further into that question. Now, how will the code of practice promote sustainable digital ecosystem? Now, will it also address ultimately misinformation and disinformation, as well as the menace of fake news? These are some of the questions we intend to put forward to our guests as we discuss the new regulations for online platforms in Nigeria. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and welcome to the program on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian Umar, also welcoming you to the show. We are reaching you from our headquarters studios in Abuja, the nation's capital. We'll expect complementary segments in the course of today's package. For now, here is the morning news with Frama Pani. Good morning, Frama.
Good morning, Kieran. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari says things are getting better for the governing APC to the build-up of the 2023 general elections. This was while receiving in audience the governor-elect of Ekiti State, Abiodun Ayobami Oyebanji.
Mr. President, your untiring effort to reposition our party is paying up. We faced an election fair and square. We did our best. The results showed up.
We remain grateful to Almighty Allah for making victory our lot. So it's a pleasure to be here to present the governor-elect so that His Excellency the President will know him firsthand.
The governors, how they mobilize themselves, the APC governors, and supported you. I'm very, very impressed with the people, how they orderly and patiently waited for their turn to vote, and how they voted you, how they voted our party. The party activities of recent have been very encouraging. Congratulations, Chairman. You are a very lucky man. You came on board when things are getting better. And I hope you will sustain it.
British High Commission has congratulated people of Ekiti State for their peaceful and democratic participation in the governorship election held 18th June 2022. In a statement, the Commission noted commendable improvements in the electoral process, especially better functioning of the biometric voters accreditation system, BVAS, and commended INEC, security agencies, civil society partners, and all stakeholders for their collective efforts in the successful conduct of the poll under the new Electoral Act of 2022. The Commission also raised concerns on reports of vote buying and encouraged Nigerians to register and collect their PVCs and participate actively in the political process. The statement assured Nigerians of the UK government's continuous assistance to INEC and partners to deliver peaceful, credible and inclusive election in Nigeria. Meanwhile, the Federal High Court in Abuja has restrained the Independent National Electoral Commission from ending voter registration on June 30th, 2022. Justice Mobolaji Olajuwon gave the order in an interim application following the hearing of an argument on motion ex parte instituted by Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. SERAP and 185 concerned Nigerians had early this month filed the lawsuit against INEC, asking the court to declare unconstitutional illegal and incompatible with international standards the failure of the electoral body to extend the deadline for voter registration to allow eligible Nigerians to exercise their rights. The suit is adjourned to 29th June 2022 for the hearing of the motion on notice. The suit followed by the decision by INEC to extend the deadline for the conduct of primaries by political parties by 6 days from June 3rd to June 9th. But the Commission failed to also extend the online pre-registration, which ended May 30th, 2022, and the continuous voter registration ending June 30th, 2022. SARAP also asked the court for an order of mandamus to direct and compel INEC to extend voter registration by a minimum of 3 months and take effective measures to ensure that eligible Nigerians are able to register to exercise their right to vote in the 2023 general elections. Now, prosecutors and women judges are in Abuja to evolve the best ways of prosecuting gender-based violence in the country. Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, lamented that sexual offences and violence against persons are severe human rights violations, yet prevalent in the society.
It is general knowledge that sexual offences and violence against women are severe human rights violations, yet they levy widespread ignorance.
It is also intended to sensitize judges and other justice sector stakeholders as to the crucial roles they play towards the eradication of this menace.
In this light, a lot of the judicial rights different stakeholder administration justice can't really be discharged without limited investigation and prosecution.
Sequel to a recent call by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo on professionals, particularly professionals in politics, to engage government more on its activities and policies, the Vice President received one of such professional bodies, the Nigerian Institute of Architects, which is offering to assist government achieve its aims on infrastructure development.
We are like some sort of a pressure group to focus or to give government a focus on the things that they have said they would do, and also see how, rather than sit back and criticize them, see how we can contribute towards helping them achieve some of these goals and objectives that they've set for themselves in the overall interest of Nigerians. And it's a situation where if the economy is better, it's not just the people in government or the politicians that benefit, it trickles down to every sector of the economy.
First Lady of Nigeria and President of the African First Ladies Peace Mission, Aisha Buhari, has expressed satisfaction with the level of work done at the Permanent Secretariat of the AFLPM in Abuja, which is currently under construction. This came to light when she paid a inspection visit to the site to ascertain the level of work done, challenges, and the way forward towards accomplishment.
We are on target, which is to deliver the project by end of January 2023. We are following the program of work designed to reach this rate. Now we have around maybe 20% of the progress overall, and we are following the same report to complete by 2023 January.
Africa. And for this particular project belonging to the Africa First Ladies Peace Mission to be sited in Abuja, I'm sure you will agree with me, has given effect to that perception of Nigeria as the capital of corporate Africa. This we are very happy, and hopefully we look forward to making Nigeria a pride nation that will host a secretariat for the African Ladies Peace Mission.
Kano Ultra Modern Cancer Treatment Center is expected to take off by the end of August this year. Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje stated this during an inspection visit to the site of the project.
The sensitive equipment, Your Excellency, are almost completely around the farm. We have already briefed Mr. President Muhammad Buhari, and he has promised to be here in 2 months' time in order to commission this all-important project.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Kieran after this break.
Every one of us is affected by the circulation of illicit small arms and light weapons in our communities. Our beloved ones, breadwinners, farmlands and livelihoods are lost. Our homes are lost. Even young children are not left out. These weapons cause pains and sufferings, devastating our societies. It is our collective duty as every Nigerian stakeholder, religious or community leaders, traditional rulers, or civil societies and at every level of governance to work with security agencies to stop the proliferation of illicit arms. We must shun the trafficking or possession of illicit arms. We must reject any inducement to help in its transportation. We must report all suspected individuals or groups involved in the smuggling or stockpiling of small arms and light weapons or illicit arms to the nearest security agency for prosecution, as our government is very determined to end this menace. Let us come together and work for safe and secure Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons.
Wake the champion in your child. Give them energy to go further. Milo Active Go, the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa, helps wake up the champion in your child. Milo!
I find the strength I need every time that I look into your eyes. I know the worry, 'cause I know that you did by my side. And if I fall away, right in the midst of all my hour, you know that I am for my while. Oh, you always there for me. No matter what I do, you love me unconditionally. Show up for me every day, no matter when I show you. You show me love, you show me love.
The broadcast media ecosystem is dynamic and requires continuous training for practitioners to perform optimally. NTA Television College, Jos, invites relevant officers to the following specially packaged training programs. Intermediate online news reporting skills, date 13th July to 5th August 2022, 4 weeks. Sports coverage and reporting skills in the mass media, date 13th July to 22nd July 2022, 2 weeks. Basic camera operation techniques, date 1st August to 26th August 2022, 4 weeks. Advanced broadcast accounting and auditing, date 15th August to 9th September 2022, 4 weeks. Transmitter operations and maintenance, date 22nd August to 26th August 2022, 1 week. Workforce intelligence, key to organizational effectiveness and efficiency, date 5th September to 16th September 2022, 2 weeks. The course fee for 1 week courses is 100,000 naira per participant. The fee for 2 weeks courses is 150,000 naira, while the course fee for 4 weeks courses is 180,000 naira only, accommodation inclusive. The venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA Television College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-795335 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be. To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels. Leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or spins. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being feeble, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
All right, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, time for business. And so let's join Comfort Amodu for details.
Discussions at the maiden edition of the Nigerian Employers Summit was focused on the needs to establish a national platform for strengthening youth employment through skills development and promotion of made-in-Nigerian goods. To this end, the federal government is of the view that for faster recovery of the Nigerian economy, the business community should reinvest proceeds of their businesses into the economy for more jobs.
He said, as we make profits, let us plow back such profits and create and retain jobs. As the cost of production rises, consequently causing a rise in the cost of goods and services, there is a justifiable consideration that we should equally, as government, try to, by tax credit and other forms of support, ensure that companies are alive so that the social protection flow is not compromised.
The summit made far-reaching decisions aimed at deepening fiscal and monetary policies for enterprise growth and steps towards stronger partnership between the private and public sector with business news Comfort and Modu.
Many thanks, Comfort, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next for us is newspaper review.
All right, it's time to welcome our newspaper reviewer, Bayat Good to have you back.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Good to see you too.
All right, yeah. 3 papers, you got 2, I have 1. Yeah.
All right, let's begin with the leadership newspaper. Adamu evasive over Lawan Akpabio senatorial tickets. That's on page 7. 7 years after opposing President Buhari's election, Urubebe joined APC. The story is on page 6 of leadership newspaper. Worst energy crisis looms over global supply shortfall. Keys return as Ipman shuts stations. 85 days after Kaduna train attack, 50 remaining hostages threatened by snakes, scorpions, 9 feared dead. We're working on rescuing them, according to the federal government. The story is on page 4. Now, Abdul Salami hospitalized in London, discharged. Details on page 8. Court stops INEC from closing voter registration. It's also found on page 6. Now, Ekiti governor-elect decries involvement in vote buying. It's also on page 6. Now, let's turn to The Nation. The Nation newspaper. All right, I hope you can see that the Nation newspaper above the nameplate. 50 Kaduna train captives sick, dying. Negotiator worried. That's on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. Attack on churches. Bandits seek 100 million ransom. Also on page 5. Lawan contested senatorial primary, says APC chairman. The story is on page 4. Okay. Following that is Ribadi sues Adamawa female candidate and INEC. It's on page 28. Now, below the name flag, governor-elect disputes Ekiti vote buying claim. Trend worrisome, says UK envoy. Excited Buhari receives Oyebanji. These are the stories following that headline. All right, and now the lead story on the nation. Petrol marketers increase pump price amid scarcity. With a rider, motorists queue for product in Lagos, Ado-Ekiti, Abuja, and others. And now at the bottom of the Nation newspaper, voter registration court restrains INEC. It's on page 6. Rainstorm destroys 73 houses in Katsina State. The story is on page 27. Translate.
Okay, we also take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper, you have a number of headlines there that are above the nameplate. You have manufacturers reduce investment by 61% and borrowing cost hits 22%. That's on page 20. And then also there is the story that Kirian read a while ago. Court stops INEC from ending voter registration on June 30th. Nigerian Airlines others to lose $700 million in 2022. And then let's take a look at the lead story with Kika presidential poll. Interim running mates risky. Ex-INEC chiefs won APC and LP. That's Labour Party. We have 3 riders of that headline. Placeholder as party's invention. It has no place in the constitution. Say SANS and INEC. Nobody gave me any condition, but I'll step down for new running mate. That's according to Masari, who's been named as the placeholder or interim running mate to Tinubu for the presidential election next year. Presidential candidates may lose tickets over unqualified deputies. That's according to state lawyers. You've seen there at various filling stations, scarcity hits Lagos and Abuja. Fuel sells 180 naira a litre as NNPC cuts supplies. Federal Commission guards brutalize blind job seekers, several hospitalized. Abuja woman dismembered, stuffed in sacks. Residents suspect ritualists. These are called the Kubwa on the outskirts of the city. Sexual misconduct. OAU and Uni Abuja dismiss 4 professors and 14 others. Gunmen abduct Plateau monarch and Ochi head. Demand 150 million naira. Osinachi's mother in court seeks justice for daughter. Terrorists demand 100 million naira ransom for abducted Kaduna worshippers. Fire.
Thank you, Kinsley. Our hearts must go out to the passengers who were abducted on the Abuja Kaduna train, who are now spending their 85th day in captivity. The latest news about them is that the man who is in contact with the terrorist who is negotiating is saying that the captors are now subject of elements. Their condition is deteriorating after staying 85 days in the jungle, and also they are now subject to rain, sunshine, snakes, and scorpion bites. The leadership reports that 9 of them probably have died, but that is not confirmed by the report by the nation. Tukuru is a go-between who is working under the auspices of Sheikh Ahmed Gumi, and is said to have secured the rescue of the 11 that were let off. But he is raising an alarm that the health condition of the captors is deteriorating fast, and our hearts go out to them. Our prayers should support them so that they will be rescued very quickly. Now, coming to the Federal Capital Territory, the police command has arrested a lady who tweeted that she and 16 others were kidnapped. This story went viral on the Twitter when she tweeted that men supposed to be wearing uniforms like policemen knocked at their door of their home and bundled 16 of them, including 3 pregnant women and 2 children, into a bus and zoomed away. It was on the social media, and it caused panic in Abuja. 3 days later, the FCT police command disclosed that she had actually forged the kidnap, and the kidnap story was false. On Monday, she wrote, "Good day all. I would like to formally apologize to the general public, to the whole police department, and my friends and family for misleading them with the tweet of June 14. Nothing of such happened. It was just my delusion and negative thinking." She adds, "I intentionally took myself out of the house, entered the bush, dehydrated and starved myself for 4 days. Just like that. There was no kidnapping. I truly apologize. Please pray for me."
But what do you make of this?
Two things.
What kind of delusionment is she talking about?
Certainly, the lady needs attention. For her, like she said, apparently she seems to be in a delusion. Sometimes there's a mental condition that people will feel that they are threatened and they will hear voices or see visions that actually are not real. And for her to have tweeted that on the social media, and that raised alarm in Abuja. I remember somebody drew my attention that, look, this is another new way of kidnapping in Abuja. You that are living in Abuja, be very careful. Only to find out that this is untrue. So she needs help and she needs to be investigated thoroughly. And it goes to tell us it's not everything that we see on the social media that we have to always take with a pinch of salt. And that is the alarm. What people now refer to as citizen journalism. There is a danger when people sit in the corner of their room and they feel that they can put any story out there and push it, whether true or false.
Where is the lady now?
She's with the police now.
Yeah, the police should conclude the investigation very quickly and charge her to court. The help you talked about, whether psychiatric or psychological, will be offered to her when she's in prison. That's straight away. There is no argument about it.
Honestly, because
charge her straight. Go to the magistrate court and then it's she sentence her to 3 months, minimum 3 months imprisonment. Max 6 months.
She did that beautifully. I was even wondering when I first read it, how could the kidnappers allow you to use your phone, to tweet or send any message out? Usually, what they do is to take your communication gadget. So how was it?
Your journalistic mind was making you to verify the veracity of that story. So you had an element of that. But how many members of the public will go to that extent? That is the danger level.
It's a criminal offense. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Let the police. This is not the case of saying you are looking for more facts. Just develop the case file as quickly as possible, and then get a competent police officer to prosecute the case in the magistrate court and sentence her 3 months minimum, and then probably 6 months. When she comes out, I'm sure you got a shrink, that's a psychologist, to attend to her while she's at Abuja prison or wherever she might be to take her to.
And another development, the FCT Police Command also held a meeting with leadership of what is described as commercial motorcyclists, otherwise known as Okada. The Commissioner of Police, Babaji Sunday, was categorical in telling them that many of the crises we are having in Abuja now, especially that of violence and also taking laws into their hands, is placed at the doorstep of motorcyclists. He warned that this will no longer be tolerated from them, and henceforth they will be challenged to obey the traffic rules, obey the law, and if anything comes from that, they will be held accountable for it. 150 of their leaders attended the meeting, and they assured the Commissioner of Police that they will clean their ranks to make sure that they are still law abiding. But one of the things the leaders need to take care of is that they have to ensure that the motorcyclists do not have knives on them. Many of them do have knives. At the least provocation, they will bring out the knife, and before you know it, they'll stab somebody, and blood will begin to flow.
This issue of fuel scarcity, will you just say something about it? The petrol marketers increase pump price and scarcity. Do they have the power?
My worry is, yes, I don't know if petrol marketers can increase pump price. The procedure before was that there was a PPPRA that had the mandate to increase the price, and the last increase was that the lower base was 162.50, the upper base was 165. Whether that margin has been increased by the new authority is what is not known. But of recent, there have been hue and cry by the Independent Petrol Marketers Association that they are having challenges about their vehicles, about even getting diesel to move their trucks and move petrol along. Sometime last week, the president in his unanimity also made gestures towards them about the diesel for them to move their tankers around the country. But for them to increase pump price is sounding strange to me.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a number of issues that we cannot immediately exhaust if we were to get into a brief conversation around the lingering fuel scarcity. I mean, this year it's been topsy-turvy in terms of our energy sector, whether it's power or whether it's petrol or whether it's diesel. We have seen the climb in the price of diesel, for instance, sometimes around about 700 or 800 naira per liter. What we're talking about is the bridging sum normally paid under the petroleum equalization arrangement. Because marketers have complained also about that. The president has increased that. At some point, we also heard, oh, no, it was the war in Ukraine and Russia that was the cause of it. Oh, it was some other point again that we were talking about, one doesn't just understand what is going on. And we were told auto gas. Where do you get auto gas around the place?
Well, I think that's a topic for another day, really, because it's halting, that we have continued to experience it. So we'll talk about 180 per liter. If you go down to the eastern part of the country, of course, for several months now, the pump price has been 180, 185, and what have you, and there's no scarcity of fuel in that part of the country. All right, Bayo, this is where we conclude this segment of the program. We'd like to thank you for being here this morning, as always. We will see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
For my analysis on what big papers are saying. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we shall be focusing our attention on the main topic for today, regulation of social media platforms. Stay with us.
We don't carry Pikin go hospital. I don't see why we carry Pikin go hospital because of ordinary fever now.
Ordinary fever? The way body dey hot like that.
Now cloth now soak inside water take rubber, but she don't dey play even as I come out.
If na malaria na dey worry that pikin, by now you know say the thing for don worse pass.
Yeah. Wait. No be my daughter dey do that one. Abeg make I quick call mechanic.
Carry cloth and water.
Yes. For generator.
You use cloth and water clean our pikin body. Go use that same pattern for the generator. Make we see as e go work.
Sense, mama. I see sense o. See, I go do am correct now. Make you carry this one, help me call the engineer. Make I carry sharp the hospital.
If fever catch you and you no go treat am sharp, if you serious spot as e dey o, especially for them whenever reach 5 years.
Do test. If na malaria, finish medicine. If no be malaria, go your health worker will tell you wetin to do.
Now, Federal Ministry of Health and American people them gonna this message.
Wake up the champion in your child. Give them energy to go further. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child.
A new edition of TV Guide out exclusively with Professor Umar Garba Dambata, Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission (NCC).
We have unveiled the 622 as a toll-free line through which consumers can be able to lodge their complaints. And we have provided Introducer 112 as a national emergency number.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, reading science here. Very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or the NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
We are all Nigerians against all odds.
individuals, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within, and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
All right. Recently, the federal government has issued code of practice for online platforms in the country. Correspondent Joseph Osen gives an insight into the provisions of the document.
Much of social interaction and businesses these days take place on internet with online platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Google, and TikTok, among others, engaging large proportion of the population. Nigeria, with an estimated population of more than 200 million, is said to be one among big users of online platforms, especially among citizens in urban areas. But in as much as the development in digital technology, aiding speedy and effective connectivity, dissemination of unlawful and harmful contents such as hate speech, cyberbullying, as well as disinformation and misinformation are taking negative toll on citizens and the country. For instance, promoters of ethnic and religious divides have vehemently used the social media to fuel disunity and communal crisis among communities in the country. Reported cases of scammers using the cyberspace to rob Nigerians of their hard-earned life investments have continued to grow in numbers, while the NSAS protests in 2020, which culminated to loss of lives and massive destruction of property, was said to be aided by mischief makers on social media, just to mention a few. While many of the websites make huge gains from the large population of Nigeria, many never mind the negative effects contents posted on their platforms are having on the country and its people. A call in some quarters for the authorities concerned to regulate activities of online networks is now, however, getting a boost, as few days ago, the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, issued a code of practice for internet intermediaries and conditions for operating in Nigeria. NITDA conditions of operations include: establish a legal entity by registering with Corporate Affairs Commission, appointing a designated country representative to interface with Nigerian authorities, abide by all regulatory demands after establishing a legal presence, comply with all applicable tax obligations on operations under Nigerian law, provide a comprehensive compliance mechanism to avoid publication of prohibited contents and unethical behavior on the platform, and provide information to authorities on harmful accounts. But the question on the minds of many are: will the conditions control unlawful and harmful practices online? How will authorities regulate and control these activities? And will this really enhance the nation's digital economy? Yes, some good morning, Nigeria.
We'll share perspectives soon.
Thank you very much, Joseph Hudson, for that background. With us in the studios now to discuss issues around the code of practice, let's welcome Emmanuel Edet. He's a lawyer and head of legal and board matters at the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA. Edet, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, Kingsley.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios, regular guest from Good Morning Nigeria, Dr. Uche Banaso, the Associate Professor of Cybersecurity and also Executive Director, Center for Cyberspace Studies at Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Dr. Banaso, we're glad to have you.
Thank you for having me, and good morning, Nigerians.
And also joining the conversation from our Kano studio is Mohammed Tahiru Lawal. He's the coordinator, Network of Advocates for Digital Reporting and head of investigations and fact-checking Panicrea. Well, it is a pleasure also to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Okay, gentlemen, once again, we're glad to have you on the program. We do know that it wasn't so long ago that Nigeria lifted the suspension that it earlier slammed on Twitter on account of a spat between that entity and the federal government. But here we are, there's a new code of practice for all online platforms in the country. What has informed this decision? Let's bring in Emmanuel Edet.
Thank you very much for the question, and good morning, Nigerians. The essence of this code of practice is basically to provide what we'll call a code of conduct for those who are operating platforms within Nigeria on the internet that allow people post topics, post issues, post pictures, and ensure that these platforms are adequately used for the purpose for which they have been created, and they do not in any way violate the laws of Nigeria. It also provides for a procedure to seek redress where things are done in a manner that is illegal, and also enable the government authorities to interact adequately with this platform to ensure beneficial use of these platforms for Nigeria. And the underlying intent is to promote our digital economy and ensure that these platforms are used for the benefit of Nigerians. So that's just what we are trying to do from NITDA.
Is it so simple, straightforward?
Well, yes, and that's why I like the professor, Uche Mbanaso to come in here. Is it just that simple? Are there other connotations? Are there other underlying factors that may have necessitated the move by the federal government at this point in time?
Well, first and foremost, I think the misuse or abuse of social platforms is a global concern. It's not just peculiar to Nigeria alone. And every country in the face of the earth is also trying to do what they can do to actually reduce or minimize the effect on both national security, the economy, and also ordinary citizens. And so it's not that simple, but everything on the digital space is a work in progress. And I've said this many times that every country is grappling to understand this particular space we are in. And so what NITDA has done is good, is a good direction in trying to see how they can minimize or reduce the impact of social vices within the social platform in the country. Having said that, I have not really gone so much about the content of the code of practice. My take about this is I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know whether that is a legal instrument or how does it pan in the in the legal space. So that is the only thing I can say this a moment, but it's something that is, very good to be done, especially to help safeguard our digital space. As we are touting for digital economy, we need to safeguard our digital space. So that's the main thing.
Okay, straight away, it's the code of practice is a legal instrument. It's a subsidiary legislation. So I want to go back to Emmanuel Edet to further elaborate, because you chuckled when I asked the question whether this appears to be so simple and straightforward, because there are all kinds of boundaries that are inherent in the lines that have been published now as a code of practice. But tell us, I mean, what would this mean in addition to what our reporter gave us in the background? Namely, what would it mean for those who operate these platforms and those who also utilize the platforms?
Again, I think it's simple. The point here is that it's a space where people interact, and we don't want that space to be a lawless space. These interactive platforms already have policies they use to guide themselves on how those spaces are used. And one of the things the code does is actually to outline the laws of Nigeria that should be integrated in how these spaces are used. We've done our research and we have realized that some of these platforms actually obey laws of other countries. If we check countries like India, and recently the European Union is coming out with rules for such platforms. And if you use the platform in Nigeria and use it outside Nigeria, you notice some slight differences in some of the features of those platforms. So we are asking that Nigerians should be given a fair deal as far as those platforms are concerned. If there are issues within the country that are peculiar to the country, this should be addressed by these platforms. We're also talking about misinformation and disinformation. These platforms should not be used as instruments to spread disinformation and misinformation. Of course, there are also content that are illegal based on our broadcast code, our Cybercrime Act, and a few other laws within the country. So we're basically saying anyone that posts on this media and it's visible in this country and the person is a Nigerian or a resident of Nigeria, it must abide by the laws of Nigeria. Yes, it is a big task, but it's something that has been done before, and we feel it can be done in Nigeria. And we're also trying to get, we have spoken to the platform owners and we are getting their buy-in on this, and that is why we have shared this particular code. Let us hear what the public have to say about it, and we'll address those issues as we go along.
Okay, let's bring in Mohammed Dahiru Lawal, a coordinator, Network of Advocates for Digital Reporting and head of investigation and fact checking. Now, you've heard from other guests that we now have a legal instrument, which my colleague described as the subsidiary legislation. You are neck deep, in the cyber business, going by your designation. Now, what do you make of this current move to introduce a new code of conduct with respect to the operation of cyber platforms in Nigeria?
Yeah, good morning once again, and thank you for offering me this opportunity to speak on the matters arising in our digital and tech space. For us who are operating in the digital and tech space, especially as it has to deal with information, considering that we are in this information a bubble where we are loaded with a lot of content and we do not know what to make of which. I think this is not only commendable, but the instrument of regulation in the mold of the code of ethics that have been presented to Nigerian is very, very essential and timely, because it was only a matter of time before we would get to that particular juncture. Whether we like it or not, the internet space, is being threatened with a lot of insanity, cyberbullying, disinformation, misinformation, and even issues of ethnicity, raising ethnic tension, fears, and insecurity, and a lot of other concerns, that goes out there unregulated. And it beggars the question that we practically live with regulations all our life. We live with regulations in our homes. We live with regulations in our schools. We live with regulations in our workspace, and virtually every other thing we do. So an unregulated space, is definitely an invitation to anarchy. So I think it is very, very welcome and essential. But I think there are some concerns that have been raised by stakeholders about the instrument being a potential tool, for curbing, being a potential tool for trampling on freedom of expression. Because definitely there is a thin line, or there is a nexus between freedom of expression and human rights. And I believe that in coming up with this instrument, considering what I've seen in the entire 11-page 6-part document, NITDA really took this into consideration, and all stakeholders, as NITDA said, is a draft and subject to input from necessary stakeholders. I think all stakeholders need to come on deck to ensure that we come up with a mutually acceptable regulations that will ensure that people are carried along, and this does not serve as a potential instrument that will trample upon freedom of expression. But by and large, it is very, very welcome, and it is very, very timely, especially considering that we are now going into the 2023 general election. A lot of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news, are bound, to spread across the cyberspace. And if we do not have regulations like this, who do you hold responsible to it?
I just wanted him to continue along that thought and let us know whether the concerns he said that stakeholders have raised have been actually taken care of by NITDA's document. In your understanding, you already told us about the thin line, between regulation and trampling on freedom of expression. So, did the document take care of that concern?
Yeah, to a large extent, commendably so, because if you look at parts, I think part 5 thereabout of the regulation, I think it talked about prohibitions, and most of the prohibitions are linked to some of the already existing acts, such as the Nigerian Broadcasting Code, such as the Cybercrime Terrorism Prevention Act, and a whole lot of others, and mostly subjecting the instruments to already existing Nigerian laws. And we want to believe that the existing Nigerian law, if properly applied, is just to everybody concerned. And if you look at it very well, the instrument or the code of practice did not stipulate stringent and tough penalties that will be meted upon offenders. And I think this is largely commendable because it was tactically tied to Nigerian laws and already existing rules and regulations out there in the Nigerian communication space. So to a large extent, I think it is it's commendable that NITDA did a very thorough job there.
All right, thank you, Dahiru Lawal, for the comments you've made. We'll come back to you presently, but I would like Emmanuel Edet of NITDA to clarify some issues. If you look at our screen, and our viewers are also seeing that, we're talking about new regulation for online platforms. Now, is this a done deal or it's a draft? Because Dahiru Lawal said, stakeholders have been invited to make comments on the code of practice, which would mean that it is still work in progress. Let's clarify that. Is it a draft or it's a done deal? It's been released as a new set of regulations.
The simple answer is it is a draft, and if they get on our website, they can find the draft, and we are inviting comments from Nigerians. The truth about this is that we understand that in coming up with this kind of legal instrument, there are always challenges of taking care of everybody's interest and ensuring that people are adequately protected. The rights in the Constitution are not to be violated under any circumstance. And if you look throughout the document, a lot of the information that is needed for investigations is subject to court orders. Of course, we all know that the court is the arbiter for the people and the enforcer of the laws of the land. And this is a democratic society, and we absolutely understand that from NIDA. So the essence is that stakeholders are invited to make comments on all the issues available. So we are appealing, let us take a closer look at this particular code, identify those issues which we feel as Nigerians has some question marks, so to speak, and comment on those issues and suggest better ways of addressing some of the fears that people have. And you know, sometimes illegal content, maybe a copyright violation, gets online and it's difficult to get it off, and that's a clear violation of Nigerian law. Those are the kind of issues that we're trying to address. How do we get those things down? How do we ensure that when somebody talks to another person on these platforms, you can easily identify if that person scams a third party or things of those kind of nature? So let us take a look at this particular code. Let's not just throw it away in distrust, but let's look at it and identify those things that we think are not suitable for Nigerians and make those comments, and NIDA will address them.
Kyrian, I still would like Emmanuel Edet to address this point. Now, for how long are you going to keep your website open for comments and close it and then reach a conclusion? That's one. And what range of platforms will be affected by these guidelines when they become operational?
Okay, for the first question, we had initially given a 14-day period for this comment, and depending on what we get and the opinion of Nigerians, that can be adjusted. For the second question, it was a bit difficult for us also to determine who can be affected or what platforms can be affected, and so that's why we focused on interactive services. So basically what we're trying to say is, if someone can post something on your platform and is viewed by others, then we understand that you are captured by this particular code, because there are so many things like blogs, for example, owned by or managed by single individuals, citizen journalism, things that has the potential of affecting Nigeria as a whole, and also the possibility of violating laws in a mass scale. And we're trying to ensure that we cover the base as much as possible. We also welcome additional definition and descriptions from Nigerians in case we have not covered the base enough to address those particular platforms.
Okay, Professor Ngora, so I take it that you have gone through that document, and you know, considering what the edit has been trying to explain based on the practicability of this draft. Now, would you think that there are other concerns that NIDA should consider in this process? Because of course he said that the platform is open, their line is open for people to make contributions, you know, as to what action should be taken or what direction should be taken in terms of the practicability of this draft.
Thank you very much. You know, the issue of regulating social media or regulating the internet is debatable. People advocate for self-regulation, and because there is a disconnect between government policies and the way citizens see most of these platforms. So what is important, like I've talking to Edet, is any rule you're making must be democratic. Now, how you make it democratic is one thing, because when people talk about misinformation, misleading information, that are all subjective. What I think is fake news may not be fake news to you. And so we need to factor all this in, and this is why the social advocates are concerned about the infringement of rights of opinion if the laws are not democratic. And so and that is majorly what is the concern of the people whether these laws are democratic. And so the point is that all the content, for instance, I saw there are technical issues, and which I'm not going to reverse to discussing here. But for example, when you talk of Nigeria is different from our digital space. So you need to begin to look at it, broadly. The things of this digital space is quite vast, and so Nigeria is quite, because when you talk of Nigeria, you're talking of physical Nigeria, or you are talking about Nigerian digital space. So there are two different things, and technically, so we need to begin to expand this in such that it's going to be comprehensive. My approach to this is that it would have been more comprehensive than this. That's my approach to it, to cover a lot of things, and then to make sure the rules and laws are not vendor-centric or technology-centric, and so that because you cannot be able to cover future technology. For instance, what is the place of artificial intelligence in the whole of this equation? Okay, because when you understand the nuances of how things happen on the digital space, there is so much concentration about user. But we know today it's not only a natural person that can actually harm people. I can automate artificial intelligence to carry out an autonomous mission on the digital space to harm people, as millions of people. Then how do you account for that? Okay, and so there are a lot of digital identities that cannot be traced to natural person. So there are a lot to cover, and I would think that this should be more comprehensive than what it is now, to cover very spectrum of areas of concern. And so what is going to be done is, how do we broaden this particular something NIDA started to really help safeguard our digital space? I think that is very key.
Gentlemen, do you think this requires some form of legislation?
Well, that's the question I was going to ask, because earlier, when I saw did say that some countries have taken steps to try to regulate activities in their respective cyberspace. And the comments that he has made now would tend to suggest that, we probably would need an omnibus piece of legislation that will cover Nigeria's digital space. But Edet was explaining that this is a subsidiary piece of legislation that draws attention to pre-existing pieces of legislation. So are you then going to have, I know Edet may wish to respond to this, are you now going to have an omnibus piece of legislation that could probably be too cumbersome for people to plod through and even understand how to function?
Thank you very much for that question, Lizzie. Some people have suggested in the comments that have come in so far that we should actually go all out and get a legislation for this particular purpose. The thing about laws and technology is that, like Dr. Mbaraso mentioned, technology is quite fast, and it takes a long time for laws to try and catch up with technology. So first of all, you have to understand, do we need to regulate that space? That's the first question we should ask ourselves. If we regulate that space, will it stifle innovation? Will it slow down technology development? So as a development and regulatory agency, we always take all those things into consideration. And so far we have evaluated what we are trying to handle under this code is not the technology itself, but how people are using those particular technology. Even in the code, we do have a space where we talk about automated monitoring, because we understand that a lot of this platform use artificial intelligence to moderate the content on those particular platforms, and they plug into a lot of database across the world to identify different kinds of images and posts and see which one has been identified as fake or misinformation, and then try to use this automated means to take it down. So what we did in the code is, as it is peculiar to Nigeria, let us have humans to intervene, and so in such a way that will ensure that this artificial intelligence is not biased to our culture, because we have our own peculiarities that may not be the same with other jurisdictions. And so our approach as an agency is, let us have this subsidiary legislation that can be nimble and meet with the demands of technology as it is today. And as we go along and identify different issues, we still go through this same process and ensure that those issues are adequately covered. It is a subsidiary legislation, and by the Interpretation Act, it has the same effect as a full legislation. And so that's the approach we are taking from NIDA and the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy.
Okay, Mohammed Tahirullah, you've just listened to Edet and making some comments or trying to provide further explanations as to how to get the draft implemented, considering the fact that, of course, the cyberspace is very huge, you know, and many people are involved in it, including unidentifiable, you know, entities, you know, operating in this space. Now, in your view, what will you be telling NIDA to do to ensure efficient and the effective implementation of this draft?
So far, with what we have seen on the draft code of practice, it was an excellent work, so to speak. But then NIDA has to work extra hard. You know, the issue of distrust between government policies and the people has always been a theme, and that was probably why, you know, some people will not even touch the code of practice with a long pole. So I think NIDA, as a government agency who is coming up with this policy, need to ensure that they address this issue of distrust between you know, the users, the stakeholders, and every other persons concerned, so that people need to understand that it's about information dignity, it's about information sanity, it's about having a safer operation space. Excuse me. It's about having a safer space, you know, for operations, you know, by every users of these interactive platforms that we are talking about. So I think that's just what I would advise NIDA to do. Go the extra mile in carrying every stakeholder along, and they should not appear as if they are trying to, you know, muzzle the media, you know, and a digital space.
Dahiru Lawal, I would like you to clarify some of the comments you've made. A moment ago, you did say that, look, we face regulation and regulatory authorities in virtually every facet of our lives, including on the home front. But now you're saying that, oh, some persons wouldn't touch the code of practice with a 10-foot pole. If there is a code of practice, once it comes into operation, you are bound by it. I don't think there is a matter of choice regarding that, whether there is distrust between the government and the people. Do you have that understanding?
You see, what we have seen so far, the reactions and counter reactions soon after the code of practice became public, we have seen a lot of you know, press statements. We have seen people, you know, calling for that the code of practice should be outrightly thrown out. People who, you know, term the code of practice as a potential tool for, you know, cobbling, you know, freedom of expression. And you know, it's even funny enough that just yesterday I interacted with some journalists, and journalists who should even know better and inform the public have not even seen the draft code of practice, not to even talk of going through the draft and understanding its provisions. Rather, they are mostly relying on some of these, you know, issued out press statements condemning, you know, the code of practice. So I think my comments fall under, you know, the people in this category.
Now let's return to the studio in Abuja once more and get Edet once more on this. Let's be specific this time around. You know, there are certain you know, interactions that are going on in the cyberspace, no doubt about that, and there are so many online business concerns. Some of them are scam, but appear real. They're so couched in such a way that you will not disbelieve the information that they are dishing out. Some claim to be operators of the Bitcoin businesses and what have you. How do we deal with such elements, and how do you now interrogate what they're doing to determine whether these are real or not? Because after all said and done, your concern is to ensure that those who are misusing the cyber space should be dealt with. How do you now see the good from the bad?
Well, one of the things that we should know is that what happens in the offline environment also happens in the online environment, and where the challenge is that in the online environment, identity becomes an issue, and those are the things that government is trying to address. This code is not in isolation, because there are other government initiatives. For example, the initiatives of digital identity by the National Identity Management Commission, to ensure that anybody who is a Nigerian must have some form of digital identity, so you can identify those you're carrying out transaction with. Having said that, one of the things that is contained in the code is we are asking the platforms to give us some form of report on the number of users they have and the verified accounts. We also want the platform to have some at least minimal form of knowing your customers, so that you can actually identify some of the persons who are actually on those platforms, and you get to weed out the fake accounts that are not representative of human beings. So the whole thing is about the conduct of people online. It may be a difficult challenge for you to identify scammers, because that's their trade. They make sure it looks real so that you fall for it. But we also have a provision where people can check facts. We call it fact checkers, be able to compare some of those trends. And then again, there's also a section where we talk about those platforms providing us with certain trends and how these trends affect people. So in all this, we are trying to gather the information that will be necessary to try as much as possible to minimize the use of these platforms for illegal activities. So I agree with you that to an extent is a big challenge, but it's not a challenge we should run away from. It's something that we should take on to ensure that when Nigerians are using these platforms, they actually know that to an extent they are protected in any kind of communications they have. So it will be easier to identify those who are behind scams and then actually report them to law enforcement agencies and bring them to book.
Edith, thank you very much. Dr. Mbana, so let's come back to you. That's used an interesting categorization, which I think should be again of interest to regulators and ultimately the public. We said, when you are seeking to regulate, what do you have at the back of your mind? Is it Nigeria or Nigeria's digital space? Nigeria, of course, is a physical boundary. I would like you to clarify this further. What we'll be looking at in terms of Nigeria's digital space.
Thank you very much for that question. And well, it's somehow technical, but I'll try to, as much as I can, to break it down. When you talk of Nigerian digital space, it doesn't relate to the physical Nigeria. Everywhere we have jurisdiction, let me just give an example. If we have servers hosted in Nigerian embassies abroad, that's part of our digital space. And but when you talk about Nigeria, it seems more like the physical space called Nigeria. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. And the kind of words sometimes my legal friends use without recourse to the technical meaning deep is sometimes something you cannot be able to reconcile. And so when you are looking at this particular code of practice, it should cover our digital space. That is my take. and covering our digital space is very, very important. And there are some other concerns because one thing is dish out this code of conduct, and another thing is how do you implement it. And I'll give you a typical example. When you say content, if a platform provider restricts a certain content that is harmful to Nigeria, they can make it available to other jurisdictions. How do you reconcile that?
If you have no control over those jurisdictions, it's not your headache.
Well, but they are misinforming people.
Yeah, but it's not your headache.
Well, it's our headache because it can cause subversion. You know as well that Nigerians in diaspora is a huge population. Is a huge population. So if you, for instance, restrict the Nigerian, the space where those residing in Nigeria have access to the digital space, and those who are outside have access to this harmful content, there is no how it will not still come back to the Nigerian population. And I'll tell you why. And this is very, very technical, because the code of conduct as cycles is covering a lot of social platforms, but there's what we call user-to-user platforms. And user-to-user platforms doesn't need to be on the website, for instance. It's person to person. So how do you curtail that? So you need to, that's why I said I am not talking about omnibus law or omnibus rules, but you need to understand the nuances of the space you are trying to regulate very well.
What has been the practice in other jurisdictions that have tried to say, hey, listen, there should be some order in this lawless environment?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of rules and laws and technical measures. And so if you just only dish out laws and rules that is hard for it to implement or to monitor. For instance, you're asking a content provider in the US to remove certain content, and you can just simply, like I said, you can just filter that content to your own audience, but still allow it to other people. So there's a very bigger issue in this than simply, like my friend is saying, it's very, very simple. I don't technically, and as a technical person, and as really considerable expert in this area, I know it's not as simple as he is saying. And what other countries are doing is trying as much as they can to understand what plays out on this digital space by understanding the technical nuances of what happens. And for instance, there's what they call the deep web and all that, where people can go and get information that is not available in the ordinary internet. And so there is so much in this area, and what is important, what I think my friends should be doing more is how to create knowledge and skills in the digital space so that we can be able to provide technical solutions that can cop out or reduce the effect of these harmful contents. Because when we have the knowledge, we can design technologies that can help us, to be able to monitor these contents, to be able to regulate these contents, technically. I think that is more important, and that should be something we should actually focus on. And another aspect that I will also try to do more is that the place of research and development is not emphasized in most of the regulations and the dish out. There should be, because the motivation is very, very important. Like, people are talking of mistrust, which I was discussing with him before we came here. The people see every government move as an infringement to their rights, and so people need to understand that no, government is there to protect you. Government is not there to infringe on your rights. So your safety is very, very important. But how you get that information to people is very, very important. It's very, very important, so that people can begin to appreciate the effort of government in what they are trying to do. It's just like a parent. Certain things you tell your child doesn't take it because at that moment it feels that it's an infringement to his or her own right. But at long run, when you grow up, we will start looking back and said, had I taken the advice of my dad? So that kind of relationship should be there, and we should be very, very consistent in doing that.
I think what I have to take away, from your postulations, is the fact that there should be knowledge and skill, in the first place. And if I understand you mentioning R&D as well, it means that we have to devise our own means, technologically. All right, homegrown technology, to see how we can also deal with that. But I'm going to ask you this with respect to compliance. All right, now, how can compliance with the code be monitored, considering that the nature of online activities which cut across borders?
Thank you very much for that question. It's one of the important things that we are trying as much as possible to ensure that we push compliance as the primary objective of this particular code, because one of the measures we have put in place is for this platform providers to give us some form of report on the activities they are carrying out within Nigeria, and this report will contain those elements that ensure that they comply with this particular code. So it's more of a self-regulatory approach, as well as using certain sections of our NIDA Act, which says that we can actually prosecute people who do not comply with our regulation. Again, we want to emphasize at this particular point, NIDA is not an arbitrary agency. We operate within the confines of the law, and whoever violates our regulation, we will take the person to the court of competent jurisdiction to actually make the pronouncement. So where the court sees that things are not done the way they're supposed to be done, they will actually make pronouncement to that effect. So compliance is based on the NIDA Act, as well as trying to ensure that there is some form of self-compliance by these platforms.
Okay, thank you. Let's return to Mohamed Dahiru Lawal, the coordinator of a network of advocates for digital reporting. Now, in your view, of what benefit, will this regulatory approach by NIDA be for the nation's digital economy, for instance? You have been in practice for a long time, and of course, I know you have colleagues, in the digital business. Will this in any way change the course of history of the nation's digital economy, do you think? Digital economy.
Yes, to a very large extent. Currently, even without regulations, and even without some of these big techs operating formally in Nigeria and paying the applicable taxes, digital economy is already contributing about 18%, to the nation GDP. So you can imagine if they are able to now formally open shops and pay the applicable taxes. You can imagine how marginally our GDP will grow in terms of the digital economic contribution to the nation's economy in general. In addition to the fact that it's going to create more jobs, for people around, and there will be more emphasis on issues of local content. Especially with the fact that there's emphasis on context, the Nigerian context, that's on the digital economy side of the whole regulations. And then also the issue of security. I think there's going to be some level of sanity in the digital space, whereby we can also see how we can regulate certain insightful speeches and statements, that usually descend into physical, inter-ethnic and inter-religious attacks among other people. And I think there will also, if we look at it also from the context of our diversity, there is also going to be more unity among ourselves, because people now know what lines not to cross in order to be able to spite or incite another ethnic group, as is the case right now in our cyberspace. Because sometimes when you go under some comment, you will see that, especially when you read news or some posts, you see that comments are mostly divided along ethnic and religious lines. So I think there will be that level of sanity. And I think also what is also key, what is also of concern to me particularly as someone who operates in the information space, is the fact that there's going to be some level of critical thinking. In many forums, I've always emphasized on the need for information literacy. People need to understand, the basics of how to even verify certain information they consume. And I'm glad that the code of practice also stipulated a provision for the fact that there must be, these platforms must ensure that they from time to time organize some form of digital literacy programs to appraise platform users, and also even collaborate with independent fact checkers and what have you. So I think when we have this in play, there's going to be more of critical thinking and informed decision making among the Nigerian populace as against what we are having now, spontaneous reactions from every content we come across online.
All right, thank you, Mohammed Lawa. We will return to you as we make progress in the conversation. This is Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. We will take a short break now. When we come back, the conversation continues.
Wake up the champion in your child. Give them energy to go further. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child.
The Digital Switch Over project, which is commonly referred to as DSO, which entails television channels switching from analog to digital broadcasting, is one of the biggest projects embarked upon by this administration. Branded as free TV, offers viewers about 60 digital channels, including sports, music, movies, and news. The federal government has licensed about 23 set-top box manufacturers. 7 of them have production, employing several thousands of people. We made it now compulsory for all stations in Nigeria to only broadcast productions made in Nigeria for products which are produced in Nigeria.
Our pastors, our imams, in every church, in every mosque, please realize that in the course of praying for peaceful and transparent elections, we all have duties beyond prayer. If we want a stable society before, during, and after the elections, what should you be saying to those that worship with you? All Sundays and all Fridays, you are saddled with the responsibility of bringing up good generations. It is therefore your duty to both man and God to ensure peace all the time, no matter about elections. People talk to people and people listen. Talk to your followers. Make them listen to ensure peaceful 2023 elections. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
The counsel of our fathers. I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
All right, you're welcome back, and still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I want to return to Emmanuel Edet of NIDA, his head of legal and board affairs. Tell us something again in terms of the target of these regulations against the backdrop of what Dr. Mbanasa said, whether the regulations are intended to be vendor-centric, that's to say those who sell the platforms or who sell all the issues that are pertinent, or whether the regulations are intended to target the user, because I would imagine that different considerations would apply for the vendor and for the user, because I mean the user sometimes might just be an ordinary citizen who who has no deep knowledge or deep insights into what all of these regulations might entail?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. Well, one of the things that we are focusing on is the protection of the user, which, like Dr. Mbanaso mentioned, there has to be some form of awareness of what is available on this platform, how the platform is used. And the Code of Conduct specifically mandates this platform to regularly inform the users of their user policy as far as their platforms are concerned. And it also ensures that this platform comply with certain procedural measures to protect the users, like fact checking, for example, and also providing user with any information relating to the account whenever they make such a request. We also encourage this platform to carry out awareness activities for the users to protect them as well. Whether it is vendor centric, I don't think so. I think it's actually balanced between the users and the vendors, and we know the vendors have a business to run. We quite understand that, and those businesses are part of the growth of the digital economy. So we are not trying to stifle the vendors, so to speak. We just want to make sure that Nigerian laws are complied with when the vendors operate within this space, whether physical or digital, and also Nigerians are protected whenever they use these platforms. And so if they suffer any kind of infringements, their rights are adequately protected as well.
All right, I think the key word there is the protection of the user, and of course you know that a lot of criminals also make use of telephones, and of course they also understand the technology very well, that they use different platforms. Without mobile telephones, kidnappers and other criminals cannot or exhibit their operational superiority, which we are seeing these days, because they get away with their act and properly coordinated, using social media. So how does this intend to curb that? Is there any mechanism that could be channeled, towards ensuring that the criminal elements, are fished out, through perhaps checking and what have you? Let me bring in Mbanaso here again.
Thank you. It's a very good question. And if you recall back to what I said about the whole idea of trying to regulate, trying to protect, trying to safeguard, is that we should know that the rules and the regulations, I see them as service level agreements. And service level agreements in the digital space, trust is an issue. And when we talk about trust, we talk about both digital trust and behavioral trust. Can I behave at all times the way the other party expects me to behave? So I've asked a provider, for instance, that if you provide me probably a user account that violated or infringed on other people's rights, and that is the elements of trust, will this provider actually act according to your expectation? So that comes back to what I was trying to say, is that in as much as we are delving in this area, we should know that what is germane in this area is knowledge and skill and homegrown solutions that can help us tap deep into this space and understand, what is, it's just like a theme. That's what they call things that are behind the scene. To understand the things that are behind the scene so that we can deeply protect our space. You can only do that. Remember that the digital space that we are using is highly promoted by the Western world. They understand the hooks, nooks, and corner of actually what is happening, how they can twinkle it as they like, to project their own mission and vision. And so our deeper understanding of what is happening there will help us to protect the unsuspecting citizens who want to use this thing legitimately to be able to go about their business to grow our digital economy, as it were, to ensure that we reduce to minimal the negative effects of digital space to our citizens. So my take about this is that research and development, homegrown solutions should play a very vital role in helping us to monitor the internet, because what we rely now is almost all our things are imported. We import them, and when you import them, those people you import it from also put backdoors to monitor what you are using those devices to do, and sometimes they can remotely deactivate some functionalities of these devices.
But R&D and regulation are not mutually exclusive, are they?
They're not mutually exclusive.
All right, fine. So the point is noted about R&D, but our focus this morning is on regulation, which is to say what needs to be done. I would like maybe for our viewers to have an understanding. From time to time, you do get to watch U.S. Senate or congressional hearings on some of these tech giants. Facebook. In the EU nations, fines have sometimes been imposed on some of these persons for infringing some of the regulations.
Yes.
So how do they get around to doing those things if, of course, there isn't concern about what is playing out in their spheres?
You see, you need to understand, they say who blows the pipe dictates the what? The tune. Most of these platforms are hosted in these countries. So they have, these platforms are not hosted in Nigeria. You need to understand the technicalities of what we are talking about. So they have all it takes to muzzle these tech giants, because most of these platforms are hosted in their countries. For instance, if you remember what happened between Apple and sometimes with the National Security Agency in the US, when they are specifically looking for a way to break a certain phone to be able to get a particular information, if you remember that particular saga. Now, there was something that played out. Apple has to protect its integrity, and the national security is important, germane to America. And you recall that for them, after some few days, it was reported that a company in Israel was able to break this particular phone for the America to be able to carry out their function. But what we ordinary people don't understand, what has gone underneath.
Exactly. I understand what you're saying, Kyria. I mean, we don't need to understand what. Okay, we may have a general idea that there are big players behind it. I talked about the deep web. It's like the deep ocean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's where that's where you get the big fish anyway, and that's where you have some of the most prolific oil wells.
Yes.
For instance, but Kyria, what I'm driving at is as follows. Our concern is not to be confronting those, who are the designers or originators of this tech.
Yes.
We are saying at our own end, and from the explanation provided by EDEC, the broad scope of the regulation re-emphasizes pre-existing legislation.
Yes.
So what is wrong with protecting ourselves and protecting our users?
I think what he's saying, really, is germane to this conversation, because if you are remotely controlled by an entity that you don't have access to, or an entity that has total control of the space in the first place because they originated it and they own it, right? There could be behind the scene act that you may not be able to detect. Absolutely. And his question would be, do we have the technical knowledge, the understanding? Does NIDA have the capacity to, out of the way, in some cases, be able to now, make a request to say, look, we have discovered this technically based on our own knowledge and skills. Please, Facebook, explain this to us. How do we access this and get this information? Do you have such capacity?
Just wait before you answer that question. It doesn't have to be NIDA. I think there is NIDA is just an agency of the federal government of Nigeria. It doesn't have to be NIDA. When we are talking here is there should be a deliberate, coordinated, and concerted effort to begin to bridge the digital divide in this area, So that is what is germane as a country. That is what is germane. So how do you protect your citizen when most of the data, for instance, I have this argument with him when we are doing data protection bill, and they said that no, it doesn't matter where the data is hosted, but I said it matters to me as an expert in this area, because it's what you have control, what you have physical control, you can control. Exactly. And so these tech giants, if for instance Google is having its servers in this Nigeria, do you understand? We have to kind of exercise a lot of powers onto it, because he knows that his business is at stake. But if Google is not having his servers here, his servers is in South Africa or is in the UK, how do you exercise this power you are talking about? So it is very important.
I see the point you are making. I mean, that's it's patriotic, no question about that. But if you were to extrapolate this into the economic realm, you will see that the challenges, of course, are much broader. I mean, you're talking about control. Bretton Woods institution, IMF, World Bank. I mean, what kind of leverage do they have over some economies? If you have your foreign reserves, why do you think, for instance, the Western world, often led by the United States, will be imposing economic sanctions and financial sanctions on other entities? It is because of the control that they have. You cannot have Iran is there, Russia is there. Of course, Russia, of course, is showing quite clearly now that it's also a world power. But I mean, you're not talking about a new world economic order right here, is it?
But I think what you say is that you also need to have a knowledge base. And understand a skill that could also enable you as a nation to also say, okay, let's look at this, let's look at that. Why do we have all these security agencies, CIAs and what have you, and and I think he's talking about technologically for Nigeria to have a base, a knowledge and skill to also counter certain things.
I recognize that, and the greater value also of what you said is that it doesn't have to be a government agency. I mean, it may be private sector, but you have to have the capacity so that government can reach out to you. It's not every time that you have a government agency.
What is key is coordination. You must be able to coordinate the affairs of what is happening. A measurable coordination. For instance, let me just give you a sample for the sake of argument. If you look at America, for instance, America knows how much MSc graduates they have in cybersecurity. They have a target for the next 20 years. How many graduates they are going to have in this field? They have a target. How many PhDs they are going to have? Because all these particular skills plays different types of role in the whole equation. We don't have that in the country as it stands now. And so everybody is doing whatever he likes. So that coordination is key.
It's not so much of coordination is key, but the key thing is a deliberate policy to recognize that you will need this skill set going forward, and then you begin to say, look, how do you incentivize training in those skill sets, and then you have a database.
All right. Can I respond to this? I think we also need to understand that there's a reason why the big techs are in Nigeria. And it's primarily commercial expansion. That means Nigeria has something that the big techs actually want. And it is against that backdrop that we have some form of engagement with the big tech. For example, if you just type in Google, it comes up with the Nigerian domain, google.ng. Same thing also with almost all the other big techs. So yes, they do have servers pointed here in Nigeria. And that can be considered as a logical presence. And I'm just physical. Just responding to what Dr. Mbanaso said. Yes. So it's not that they are just sitting in the US and dictating what is going on here. We have Google Nigeria. We have Microsoft Nigeria. All these big techs have Nigerian reps. And so we are saying that, okay, if you're an interactive service provider, make sure you have a Nigerian representative. You cannot have an impact on our country without having some form of presence where we can actually communicate and lay our complaints to you. That's what this particular code is trying to do. Yes, there may be issues about research, about technical, about capacity, but that's not the focus of this code right now. The focus of the code is, let us ensure that if you are operating within our jurisdiction, you have some form of presence. If you are making economic benefits from our territory, you also contribute to the development of that particular territory. So these are the foundational issues. I quite understand with Dr. Mbadaso about larger issues that need to be addressed, but that's not within our scope and
The
context.
comments you are getting so far from the draft that is on your website, do those comments recognize this larger objective for the code of practice?
Well, a lot of the comments we are getting is detailed comments on the provisions of the code, and people expressing their opinion on how the code can possibly be used in the wrong way or in the right way. Those are primarily the things that we are getting from the comments that are sent to us. So we are trying to explain, like a forum like this, to explain to Nigerians and say, look, there's a bigger picture here. It's not just about the lines and the provisions of the code. We have an objective, and that objective is to ensure that you use this online media in a safe manner, and you're able to reach those who actually operate this online media and say, look, this is the problem I have, and that problem which you have identified is actually addressed. So that's where we're going with this.
Okay, Mohammed Tahiru Lawal, let's get your closing thoughts on all of this. You've listened to the two guests here in the studio explain different aspects of this conversation, and of course with different perspectives as well. What will be your last comment on this, the giant step taken by NIDA and of course the federal government, and of course how that could lead us to successful and hitch-free operation in the cyberspace?
Interestingly, I find myself agreeing with virtually all the statement made by Doctor and NIDA's legal representative as well. We have to look at the bigger picture here, what we stand to achieve. There's an objective, and the comment also made by Doctor that coordination is key to achieving all this. And you also made a comment that there has to be a standing policy that we need to look up to, to achieve what we set out to achieve in sanitizing the bigger space. So I think all this summarizes the whole issue, because we all need to understand that the reason why we're even talking about this right now is information today in this digital age has been weaponized. It has been weaponized to achieve a lot of things. It can be used as a tool to forge things good, and it can also be used as a weapon to destroy. And without regulations like this, the lines will not clearly be drawn. So by and large, it is a welcome development, and Nigerians need to generally understand that it is for the greater good, and we need to keep our eyes on the ball, because definitely we need to nip all forms of disinformation and illegal content that make the cyberspace unsafe for us to operate.
Lawal, thank you very much there for your comments. You are coordinator, Network of Advocates for Digital Reporting, and also head of investigations and fact-checking PR Nigeria. You joined us from our Kano Network Center. I would like to once again appreciate your comments in the course of today's conversation. And then back here in the studios, I just let me get some further clarification on this, Emmanuel Edet of NIDA, because when you say that the regulations are referencing or cross-referencing pre-existing legislation, and the whole idea is to protect the user, now who has the primary, if not secondary, responsibility for dredging up or mining these pre-existing and relevant pieces of provisions in those legislation? Look, let's face it, if you are a user, how much of the NBC code do you know? If you are NBC Act in the first instance, and then NBC Broadcasting Code, how much of it would you know about the cyber security and anti-terrorism legislation and so on and so forth? So is it to bring the attention of these providers to this pre-existing legislation, or to begin to get the user, let's say Tom Jones on his own, to begin to say, look, I need to go and be studying this? It will be an ordeal, I imagine.
I totally agree with you. Well, one of the things we are seeing recently is that when people suffer online harm, they report to government agencies. And one of the things we are trying to develop as part of this code is a synergy among regulators in this space so that we can come together and ensure that everywhere is actually covered, so to speak, regarding this online harm. So take, for example, you suffer a particular harm, you don't know where to go. Wherever you go to report, these things are taken up and channeled to the proper agencies that will address it. I'll give you a typical example. You know these soft loan apps that actually give loan to people, and if you default, they send your pictures to everybody in your contact and say you're a scammer and all those kind of things. We have received several complaints about that, and we channeled it to the proper government agency that handles consumer protection, data protection as well, and then of course with the financial regulators who actually regulate those money lenders. So this code, we are not a law enforcement agency, but we are providing foundations for the platforms to retain information. So when there is an investigation, a law enforcement agency can have access to this information and use it. So that's just basically it. It's what we call collaborative regulation.
All right, Barrister Emmanuel Edet, Head of Legal and Board Matters, NIDA, well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
For Associate Professor of Cybersecurity and Executive Director, Center for Cyberspace Studies, Nasarawa State University. Would like to thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Of course, we have already signed off Mohammed Dahiru Lawal, who is from our studios in Kano.
So that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We appreciate your tuning in. Join us again tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning, for a fresh edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadalo.
And I'm Kurian Umayo. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.